about having asylum hotels in their communities. This has caused a lot of concern to many people, but you've told them that you will reject migrants going from the council areas that you now control. How will you actually do that? Because the contracts to house those people are between the Home Office and accommodation providers. You don't have the power, perhaps, to keep the promise that you've made.
There are instruments of power available to us.
Well, like what?
Judicial reviews, injunctions. There's planning laws. You know, a lot of these hotels, and there has been litigation around this already. A lot of these hotels, when you suddenly turn them into something else, which is essentially a hostel, that falls foul of a number of regulations, and that's what our teams of lawyers are exploring at the moment. And we can look at budgets as well. So the word we used was resist. Look, we're not in government yet. That's our plan, and that's why people watching this program who believe in these values, who don't want to live around people whose first action upon coming to this country was to break our laws and then to live at the behest of taxpayer money.
But the question here is the difference between saying things and doing things. Yeah. And you will be in office now in local government in much of England, and you've told people publicly that you will resist migrants coming to their communities. Yeah. But you don't have the direct power to do anything about it. Are you saying Reform's lawyers will try to use the courts to close asylum hotels? I'm trying to understand what you'll actually do.
There are a number of instruments at our disposal, which our teams are working. We've already just won the election, right? So what we're going to be doing in Reform Control Council, this is our commitment. We will use every instrument available to us. And those include things like injunctions, those include things like judicial reviews, those include things like actually enforcing the planning laws, because we think a lot of these changes that are being made are in violation of a number of these laws. And we're going to look at budget reallocation
Your new
as well.
mayor in Great...
In an increasingly fraught debate over asylum hotels and migrant resettlement, local government officials across England are sounding the alarm. But many admit their hands are tied without sweeping national reforms. Speaking to Laura Quensberg over the weekend, Zia Yusuf, a prominent voice among local leaders, articulated the growing frustrations felt in town halls from Kent to the Midlands. While communities express deep concern over the proliferation of asylum accommodation sites, officials are constrained by a legal and political framework that offers few tools for meaningful action. Indeed, while some councils have attempted to resist new asylum hotels through legal challenges or tightened housing regulations, such efforts often result in costly court battles or government override. Several local authorities have voiced their readiness to stand against what they see as an unsustainable migration burden. Yet they acknowledge that without backing from Westminster, their stance risks becoming more symbolic than substantive. The frustration is not limited to elected officials. Across affected communities, residents have raised anxieties about safety, resource strain, and the broader social implications of housing migrants in hotel settings for extended periods. Critics argue that the government's approach amounts to outsourcing a national crisis to towns and cities ill-equipped to manage the fallout. The political undertones are unmistakable. In an election season where immigration remains a volatile issue, local leaders, many of them from parties both aligned with and opposed to the current government, are walking a political tightrope. They must balance the expectations of concerned constituents with the legal realities imposed by national asylum policy and international obligations. The Home Office, for its part, maintains that the use of hotels is a temporary and unavoidable measure necessitated by unprecedented pressures on the asylum system. A spokesperson emphasized the government's commitment to finding sustainable community-based solutions while enforcing immigration laws and removing individuals with no legal right to remain in the UK. Still, local officials argue that promises of long-term solutions offer little solace to communities facing immediate challenges. Many now call for a wholesale review of how asylum seekers are distributed and supported, a reform that would require not only political will, but also significant shifts in funding, housing policy, and legal authority. As Zia Yusuf succinctly put it, words without action are meaningless. Local leaders want to work constructively, but they cannot be expected to solve a national
We've got the Telegraph now, and if there's one takeaway from the migrant crisis debate is that it's driven by takeaways, Simon.
Yes, and this, you mentioned this earlier, I think, or somebody did, that there is obviously the networks that stretch back across the channel, and they do understand why they're coming here. And one of the reasons is that it's extraordinarily easy to get a job making up to 500 quid a week working as bike couriers, they say, or obviously on Deliveroo, they all ride those kind of weird hybrid machines that we've seen, the sort of electrical bikes that they lack some of the style of the higher end models, but they kind of, honestly, I think if assuming that GB News viewers are not that keen on illegal immigration or asylum seekers flooding across, one thing you can do is, as you say, quite literally, go and collect your own blooming, takeaways.
Yeah, on the other hand, the police have been talking about how hard it is to catch illegal immigrants, and now you can just order them on Deliveroo.
Yeah, that's true.
I think what
just
they're
have
doing
a big gin trap on your front.
I think what they're doing is very clever. They know how to get to the British people is through our stomachs. We're upset about immigration, but if you bring us a nice pad thai in time, we might be a little bit forgiving. And it's worry if they're sort of taking over this market. We're in a country where you can't get a doctor's appointment, but you can get a curry from someone who doesn't officially exist. So, but the problem is, of course, if they control that market, soon they might turn on us and starve us all, punish us. But the other part of this is that people complain about these stories being in, typically in the Telegraph, in the Mail, and so on. But these are the stories that immigrants are telling each other in Europe, that you can go over to the UK and these are ways that you can make £500 a week.
Yeah, don't believe the Guardian, they say.
Absolutely.
Britain's already turbulent immigration debate took another sharp turn this week as reports emerged that asylum seekers, many of whom entered the country illegally, are earning up to $500 a week through food delivery apps like Deliveroo and Uber Eats. The revelations have ignited fury among politicians, community leaders, and workers alike, who accuse the government of losing control over both immigration enforcement and the sprawling gig economy. According to multiple sources, thousands of asylum seekers are allegedly bypassing identity checks by using rented or shared app accounts, often supplied by legal residents or even British citizens looking to profit from the demand. In doing so, they effectively vanish from official records while earning tax-free income, fueling Britain's underground economy at a time when legal workers face mounting financial pressures. One senior Home Office insider, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the situation as a perfect storm of lax enforcement, corporate loopholes, and failed border control. "We are seeing the consequences of a broken system," the source said. These individuals are not only evading immigration laws, but also undercutting lawful workers who play by the rules. And the government's response? Tepid at best. The issue has triggered strong reactions across the political spectrum. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage slammed what he called the industrial-scale abuse of Britain's hospitality and delivery sectors by people who shouldn't even be in the country. He added, "This is what happens when you turn a blind eye to illegal migration and allow corporate greed to dictate policy." Meanwhile, grassroots anger is boiling over in communities already grappling with the social and economic consequences of high immigration levels. Small business owners, legal gig workers, and unemployed citizens alike have voiced frustration, claiming they are being squeezed out of the market by competitors who pay no taxes, follow no regulations, and operate in the shadows. Nonetheless, public patience appears to be waning. A recent poll conducted by YouGov found that 68% of Britons believe the government is failing badly on both immigration and employment law enforcement. Home Secretary James Cleverly has pledged a crackdown, promising to root out illegal labour practices and hold both workers and the companies that enable them accountable. Yet similar promises in recent years have yielded little visible change.